Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening, for tuning in today. My name's Alexie. I have Tyler here today and
Hello.
Professor Rain.
Hi.
We are, first off, this is a Redlands podcast. Hey, how you doing? Topic of today, generations. How do we feel about them? What are they?
Yeah, basically just the little differences between generations. We decided to do this because I saw a really interesting conference from Adam Conover talking about millennials and the conceptions people have of millennials and how it relates to reality. So what I thought we could do is basically we take turns, maybe start with Alexie and then go to Professor Rain about just how you guys feel about what differentiates generations in general and how you feel about the conceptions people have of different generations. Maybe focusing on millennials, just because that's what I have the most information on.
Okay. We're starting with me, I guess?
Do you want to start with Professor Rain? It doesn't matter.
Well, I feel like Professor Rain's going to have a lot more to say than I do. So I'll just cut mine in shortly.
Okay, so
millennials are us, right?
Yeah, millennials are us. Anybody born after 1980 is a millennial.
Okay, millennials are us. I hear a lot about millennials being lazy and working a 40-hour job plus school I don't feel lazy, in my opinion. So I don't...
Probably the exact opposite of lazy.
Yeah, I don't feel like that's very true. But I do understand the conception of, like, we share so much now that we see other people get things and we automatically kind of think we should have that too, you know? But back then there wasn't Instagram or Facebook or even, the internet. We would go too far back, and it was a lot more of your own personal gain in your family life, So that's what I've got going on.
Yeah, it could be chalked up to just previous generations were a lot more disconnected from each other.
Yeah.
Just because they didn't have as many tools to connect to each other.
Yeah, I agree.
Or it could be that there is some laziness, but it's completely my generation's fault.
Ooh, nice.
Because life became very good, and so what did we do? We really spoiled our children, because every generation wants their children to have it better than they do.
It's nice that we're talking to somebody that has a child. That works out.
Yeah, probably the best in terms of credibility. Yeah, and I can definitely see that too. I mean, my parents kind of made an effort not to spoil me, so I see things kind of from...
I'm so sorry.
So, the whole thing about millennials always being on their phones and it ruining their lives. That's a stereotype that goes around a lot among the older generations, is that nobody talks to each other anymore and people are always on their phones.
I mean, I kind of agree with this. I really hate it when I'm, like, trying to watch a movie with someone and I'm like, wasn't that a really funny part? And they're like, what happened? I'm like, I thought we were bonding just now, doing something together. Like, I make a point when I'm with somebody and we're not just, like, downtime waiting for someone, to not actually be looking at this. This is here to check the time.
That is a specific thing I can agree with you on, because I did take a girl to see the new, the last Star Wars movie when it came out. I kept looking over and she was on her phone, just the entire time. Han Solo's on screen.
I mean, sometimes when, like, somebody's sick and you're waiting approval or, like, somebody's at the hospital, emergency situations, I understand it. But day-to-day life, like, you need to connect with somebody, and their soul.
Yeah.
I think that maybe it's not even about how much you're on the phone. I think maybe it's about manners and etiquette. And I do think that my generation looks at millennials as not having etiquette as much. And in that, like what you're saying, if you're with someone, then you want to be with that person. But I don't think it's because they're on the phone too much. Now, of course, people that don't know how to do technology are going to think that.
Yeah. Agreed.
I think maybe it's just a more casual generation altogether.
But you said you're watching a movie and you want someone's reaction. Now, see, this is totally a millennial thing.
It's a millennial thing?
That you guys watch movies by yourselves, like not even on a TV.
Oh, you mean like here?
Like on your phone or on a tablet or even on a laptop.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, now that's a millennial thing.
So would Professor Rain and our parents be in the same generation? Does that count?
I believe so.
My mom was born in the 70s?
Okay, yeah, I think that would be Gen X.
Is that? I don't want to ask you how old you are. That would be mean,
I think 60s to 80s is Gen X.
Well, somewhere in there ends the baby boomers, and I'm
Yeah.
always right after they ended.
Okay. And then Gen Y is a not real thing, right?
Gen Y
It's
was
a joke?
it was one of the potential names for millennials. I think somebody was trying to coin it, but it became a joke, whether it was intended to be or not.
What's something that you do that you think, like, millennials don't do? And I'll think of something that my parents do that I don't think I do.
Well, I finish words. I think it's a millennial thing. Maybe this is why they're sometimes stereotyped as lazy, but it's a new thing to not finish words or sentences.
You mean, like, sup?
Yeah, or like come with is what started it. And then now it's even less and less. The less you say, the better. Or something.
More acronyms and things like that. Yeah, that does happen a lot.
Which I need to look into it, but the last active theory I heard on that was just that it comes from texting all the time. That because you have a limited space to work with, or because you don't want to send somebody a wall of text, and also because when texting became a thing, you didn't have an actual alphabetical pad. You had to dial it with the numbers on the phone, and it was a much bigger hassle that I never learned how to deal with because I didn't have a phone when that kind of texting was around.
I walked to school in elementary school, so I had a flip phone, and I thought it was so cool. Never used it once, only to call mom, obviously. But it had a little button that I could just flip it open, and I'd play with that button for ages. Something I think, because I don't see many people my age doing this, I call my mom. You know, I actually call her when I get home and from a long drive, make sure, safetyness.
Yeah, I actually hate texting because I never got used to it, because I got a phone after everyone else did. So I never got used to it, so I hate texting. So it's worked its way into my life where I define certain things by whether or not I can call somebody. Like, I consider somebody a friend when I feel like I can call them and they won't get mad at me. Because I've tried calling people I thought were my friends before, and they got mad at me. They're like, why are you calling? Text me.
Millennials don't like calling at all.
Yeah.
I prefer texting to most people, but, like, people I'm really close to, I call.
Which, I get it. It's more of a involved thing to call somebody, whereas texting, you can just pick it up at any time and just respond when you get to it. But that's what I don't like. I get very anxious when people don't text me back right away.
How do you feel about this, Professor Rin?
Well,
Go ahead.
I very much am a texter, so.
I can understand that for a busy lifestyle,
Well, also, I'm a shy person, and I would much rather text people than call them.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing as far as, like, being shy goes. A lot of things like that can go one of two ways. You can either be a shy person, and that makes you prefer something like texting, where you can kind of just respond at your own pace. Mine also comes from me being shy, but it's like the opposite effect, where it's because I'm shy. Part of what I hate about texting is you can't read people's emotions that well through it, and I'm always worried I'm offending people.
Every generation has their own language.
Yes, they do.
Because words change. Just because of generations change.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always comical sometimes. Because, for instance, everyone wears flip-flops at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And that's nothing to say, grab your flip-flops, whatever. In my generation, they were not flip-flops. They were called thongs.
What?
That is hilarious.
And if I was ever to say to my daughter, grab your thongs, that would have a whole new meaning.
It's like, Mom, you told me I wasn't allowed to have thongs.
What?
Or in my case, my dad told me I was.
We're going to the beach. Why are you talking about my underwear?
And, I first noticed this when so everyone, you're even wearing a hoodie.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I am.
We never called them hoodies. They were pullovers.
Okay. I was prepared for something else that was like thong, where it's...
No, I've heard that one quite a lot. My grandmother calls the fridge something weird. I think it's not
Icebox,
the
possibly?
Yeah, it's the icebox. And I always think it's the colder of the two sides, and I'll put something in there. She's like, why'd you put it in here? I'm like, I'm sorry. The icebox always confused me as a child.
Yeah, my dad had an actual, old icebox where it wasn't electric because they couldn't afford a high electricity bill when he was young. So he had an actual thing that you would put ice in and put it under, and that would keep your food cold. he loves to tell me about how convenient things are for me now. And, there's the, another stereotype that millennials are narcissistic. There's been, I guess, a few incidents of people going into interviews and talking about the narcissism of the current generation. I think there was a Time magazine, I think it was Time, that had an article calling millennials the me generation. I have my notes for stuff like this for the end of the podcast, but I wanted to get you guys' opinions on everything first.
On the situation?
Yeah, like whether or not millennials are more narcissistic than other generations.
Well, I think what they're talking about is the whole social media platform situation.
That is a big thing that they put onto it, that we always have to talk about everything on Facebook. By the way, I don't have Facebook.
I don't personally like it when somebody has a social media platform and posts something literally every day. Like mine, I'm not gonna lie, I do have them, but mine are for big events in my life. So usually like promoting shows that I'm in, or promoting other people's shows that I know, or like a wedding or the vacation I just went on. You know, big things. Not, hey, this is the 5th thing I've ate for lunch today. Woo! Go tacos, you know? I don't think that's important. I don't think it's worth sharing.
Well, I definitely think there's some merit to this narcissism, but again, it's completely my generation's fault. Because we are oh, you were so cute, and I didn't mind looking at 40 million pictures of you. And so, of course, you grow up thinking selfies of you all day long are just great. and I mean, I see lots of young people like that, and it's probably, I mean, I didn't grow up like that.
Maybe it's just from a poor person's perspective then, because I grew up really poor, and I don't think I'm as connected to this generation as a lot of the other students around me. So maybe because I didn't have a lot of baby photos. My house burned down when I was really young, so it was a restart when I was about 5 or 6. So maybe because I don't really have a lot of pictures of me when I was young, maybe it's why I don't really post a lot now, because whatever.
I mean, that could have something to do with why I feel a little bit disconnected, because we didn't take a lot of pictures of my family. I remember when I was really, really little, there were a few photos, but most of the time I would try and hide from the camera. So after that, they gave up on taking pictures of me. So I don't really have hardly any pictures, and I don't like the ones I'm in. So maybe that does have something to do with it. So I could probably start going over the stuff from the Adam Conover conference.
Okay.
And basically, Adam Conover, he's a comedian. Like, he's not a researcher or anything. He's a comedian, but he does a show called Adam Ruins Everything, where he like dispels myths about culture, like where things come from. He is very intellectual. I mean, he has a research team that does the research for him just because he couldn't cover all of it on his own. Mm-hmm. But he likes intellectual stuff, and he is a really good talker. He's really good at being sure about his sources. And his show, Adam Ruins Everything, is really popular with millennials. So, I don't remember if it was a single company or it was the people running the conference, but basically they had him come into a conference and talk about how to market to millennials. Because like your show is really popular with millennials, how did you do that? Like, can you speak at this conference to tell us how we can market better to that generation? So he turned it into an episode of Adam Ruins Everything and gave basically a thesis at this conference that millennials don't actually exist, not the way that people think they do. And it started with him showing the Time magazine article about the me generation. He's like, obviously 20-year-olds exist because who else would make our coffee? But they don't exist. Like, the narcissistic chooses to live at home with their parents because they're too lazy to go out and get an apartment. Constantly taking selfies just because of their own narcissism is not the prevalent thing that people think it is. And that a majority of them are just people. That's all that generations generally are, is they're just different words for people born at different times. And there's not the huge difference between generations that we think there is. And he went into a few different things. The first thing he brought up is that the Census Bureau does not define generations, which if there would be anything in an official capacity that would define generations, it would be the Census Bureau. But in no point in statistics or information do they actually define people by when they were born. It's just how old you are. is all that matters to them. And a lot of the stereotypes about generations, they've done studies on. And more of the information they get seems to lean towards it has nothing really to do with what time period you were born in. It's just things that happen as you get older. Like the narcissism thing, it was not found that millennials are typically are not hugely any more narcissistic than other generations to a really large degree. But younger people are. That your levels of narcissism go down as you age across the board.
Miss Rain, how do you feel about younger people being more narcissistic?
I don't know about being more narcissistic. What that did make me think of is I do think they have a shorter attention span. And that may not be their fault either. When you look at cartoons, a good example, cartoons before millennials came along, they're going at a much slower pace. Then you look at cartoons. So what I'm saying is every bit of media coming at them that they see, flash changes like that. So it might be why they don't have a longer attention span. But we definitely had to make adjustments on how we teach and everything because of it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, yeah. When you have to constantly change your focus onto something else, it makes you almost kind of forget what you just saw. So, yeah, I agree with that.
That definitely does fit with the younger parts of the generation. Although as far as the older parts, that probably does have something to do with it. But I think also a part of that, especially going from the stuff that he discussed in the conference, it's also possible that the millennials above the age of 20 and getting into their 30s, because technically if you're 36 you're a millennial. The face of millennials is kind of 20-year-olds, but actually up to 36 you're a millennial because it's anybody born after 1980. Going into that, it could partially be their attention span. It could also just be that they're busy, because millennials do tend to be a much busier generation.
Well, wasn't it? This could be totally wrong. I'm going off a picture I saw on Tumblr, I'm pretty sure. But what I'm thinking of, isn't it back in the day, people could go to college at the age of 20, 22 and already have a house, working on their part-time job? Basically, because, inflation and everything now, we have to work so much, and I'm living at home. Well, grandma's house, and paying for college and things like that, so... Yeah, are we busier just because, money is not the same as it was 20 years ago?
Yeah, and he actually did touch on that, because he started discussing, some of the facts that he went over and dispelling some of the stereotypes, and, among the stereotypes that they're lazy. Not particularly that they're lazy, there's actually a lot of evidence that points to the contrary if you look at what millennials have accomplished. But millennials were dealt a really bad hand. People in the millennial generation, starting out their lives, at the age of 18 to their early 20s, make less than, their Gen X counterparts did at the same age.
I like how you're nodding, Miss Rain. I feel like you're into this.
Yeah, so basically we have less of a chance to make money to start our life financially than the generation before us did. And so, of course, we have to live at home longer. Because going out and getting an apartment at the age of 18 or even your early 20s is not really a realistic goal anymore. Mm-hmm. Even cheap apartments. Mm-hmm. I've looked.
But I also like what you said, that he was talking about how they're just people.
Yeah.
It's really just generations or just people. And what that made me think of is I think the reason we see them as different generations, Gen Xers different from millennials and all, is because when you have older people looking at younger people, starting with teenagers on up, they're fearful, intimidated of younger people. And so there becomes this barrier, and younger people, many of them are fearful of parents, older people. Going over and seeing, oh, your parents are home? Oh, your parents aren't home? Great, come on in, or something. And if you get around someone who, it doesn't matter if they're older or younger, but they start talking like we're all just people, then you can see very easily that I would agree with what he's saying.
Yeah, and that's even how he like kind of opened up part of the conferences, is like, because he showed a chart of like generations and it had like birth rates and the time they were born. He's like, that's actual accurate objective information. But then there's the lines in between them marking generations. That was just arbitrarily put there. He's like, if you actually look at it and you change it to the next thing, it's people. There's no lines, there's no Gen X or millennials. What you have across the board are just people who were born at different times.
We'll bring in one last fact to be the ending point, since we're at 43 right now.
Okay, I think I'll probably just go with something that was like common throughout the conference. Was he was talking about, it's the talking down about generations, and specifically like especially when it's an older generation talking down about a younger generation. It's always sort of just condescending, and it's every generation that does it thinks that they're doing it based solely on objective information, and it's just, no, this new generation really is just not as great as we were. Forgetting that before 1920, they literally called themselves the greatest generation, and how is that for narcissism? He gave like examples throughout history of like the same things that people say now about millennials. Going all the way back to Hesiod, who was the first economist in history, the first Greek economist. And he had a quote, in regards to the generation below him, "They only care about frivolous things. When I was a boy, we were taught to be discreet and respectful of elders, but the present youth are exceedingly impatient of restraint."
I love that.
Literally, when I was a boy, we were a better generation. The same thing, and that's ancient Greece.
In my personal opinion, I think it all just goes down to time. People are going to think differently the older they get, and people are always a little fearful of the new. So in the new generation, having these different ideas and different technology and creating all these different things, it's going to be a little fearful, and you're going to want to put down on it. But I think the further that we get on through time, people are going to accept the things and learn how to incorporate their own thoughts and ideas into this new generation. And I think it'll eventually all even out, That, or we'll just find something new to hate on. One of the two.
Well, every generation, I think, wants the same thing, just to be heard and respected.
Thank you guys for listening. This has been the Redlands Podcast with Miss Rain, I almost said Taylor, Tyler, and I. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you, and we'll catch up next week when we go over, what was it again? When we go over the groups of Redlands, all the different things you can be a part of, and we will have Professor Taylor over for that. Thank you guys, and goodbye.
Thank you for listening to College Life. We recorded on the campus of Redlands Community College in El Reno, Oklahoma. College Life is made by the students for the students. If you're interested in Redlands Community College, please go to redlandscc.edu or call us at 405-262-2552.